Hi, and welcome to Constanti TV's Close Up on Workplace Law, where we zoom in on recent developments of interest to employers, their attorneys, and their human resources professionals. I'm your host, Leigh Tyson, and I'm a partner in Constanti's Atlanta office. So today we're going to talk about something that's not necessarily totally a legal issue. It's really something that comes up a lot, though, and we've been getting a lot of questions about, and that is a multi-generational workforce. I'm very fortunate that I have Kim Seten, who is a partner in our Kansas City office. Kim Seten practices all areas of labor and employment. She also does National Labor Relations Act work like me, and she travels pretty much all over the country dealing with this. But she is also our associate liaison at the firm, which means she's sort of the one who introduces the associates and brings them into the fold and a part of the culture and everything. So she has some really firsthand experience. So in addition to all that, she's also one of my favorite people, both in and out of the firm. So I've been excited about talking to her all day long. So Kim, welcome.
Thanks, Lee. I'm excited to be here.
There's a lot that comes with the boomers and the millennials and a lot of sort of stereotypes about them as employees. Can you tell us a little bit about what sort of stuff you hear?
Sure. And let's understand these are stereotypes, very broad brush descriptions that we can take with a big grain of salt because nobody fits neatly in a package. But let's start with our boomers. Some of the stereotypes about baby boomers are that they are unable to use or understand technology, that they have old-fashioned ideas about work-life balance, that work is the only thing that's important to them, and that they think that they know everything in the workplace. Skipping ahead to millennials, millennials are our first generation of native digital users. So they grew up with computers and the internet at their fingertips. They are a generation, that's stereotyped to be lazy, that they don't have a good work ethic, that they don't have a large attention span, and that they would prefer never to interact in person. They would instead prefer for all of their interactions to be done via, texting if possible. Going back to Gen X, we're sort of the forgotten generation, as I like to call it. We're not digital natives, but we also did grow up with computers at some point. So we do understand technology. And really, that's about all you can say about us because nobody ever wastes ink on writing articles about Gen X.
And we like it that way. We like it that way.
That's right. Just let us get our stuff done and don't put the focus on us. And we are happy being our latchkey kid generation. And then Gen Z coming into the workplace, again, don't have a lot of data on them yet as far as workplace stereotypes, but certainly studies show that they have the shortest attention span out of any generation because they're used to information coming at them from so many different technological devices. They also are said to be a generation that doesn't want to interact face to face and that they are addicted to technology and would, 10 times rather have their computer and their smartphone and maybe a tablet as well, all doing their work instead of interacting outside with their coworkers. So those are some of the broad stereotypes that we see in the workplace.
Whenever you have stereotypes, this is when you start having liability because people start really believing in them or making jokes about them. So can you talk a little bit about some of the risks that could be associated with these generational stereotypes?
Right. Let's remember that the governing statute we're really talking about at the federal level is the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. So how do employers get in trouble? Well, typically when it comes to age claims, we see a couple different kinds of claims. One, we see claims from employees who feel like they're being forced out of the workplace, that perhaps an employer is, automating or they're increasing technology and they're not providing training and resources for older employees to learn, or the older employees feel that they're not being given those opportunities to learn. So we also see situations where people make jokes in the workplace. Hey, when are you going to retire? Or, you have a birthday party for someone who's turning 50 and it's all black balloons and tombstones. And there are a lot of people who don't find that funny. They don't enjoy jokes about their age. Or similarly, now that we have millennials who are getting over the age of 40, perhaps older workers who are being denigrating to them and saying, you're so impatient and you never pay attention and you never want to talk to me. You're just like your generation, things like that, where you're making these types of comments. It's all fun and games until someone is offended. And then those comments that you thought everybody was making and that the person was laughing along with comes back to haunt you, because then all of a sudden they said, I never found that funny and I didn't appreciate it.
Right.
And one of the other areas where employers have to be careful, and I touched on it briefly, is when we're talking about transitioning people out of the workplace. It is absolutely legitimate for employers to be able to do succession planning and to ask employees, what are your plans for retirement, so that you can, I don't know, not just have someone suddenly tell you they're retiring and you have no one to backfill their position. However, it's how employers are asking those questions that are important. You want to make sure that that's the question you're asking all employees who have reached a certain point in time with the organization, or you're doing it as part of an actual succession planning exercise. So you can show that you're not just calling in the one older worker in the workplace and saying, when are you going to retire?
I think another thing that has come up and that I've gotten asked about too, and it's just sort of what are some good pointers, some good advice when you have a situation where you have people who are much younger supervising people who are much older. And so what are sort of the things that you tell your clients about the best way of handling those scenarios?
Sure. This is one of the situations where I say training is incredibly important. You should be training all of your management and your supervisors on generational differences in the workplace and talking about it and acknowledging that different people learn differently in the workplace. They take direction differently in the workplace. And if you make it part of your corporate culture to identify that there are differences, then it's not so much someone being singled out because of their age. And we are seeing that, particularly as there are some boomers who are re-entering the workplace. Maybe they retired and they decided that retirement wasn't something that they're ready to do yet. So they're coming back in at lower level positions than they left an organization. And that is hard for them to take direction from someone who's 33 years old. And that individual thinks they know everything as well. And so there can be those conflicts, but definitely training in the workplace, not being afraid to have those conversations with managers and supervisors. And also, I always recommend when HR is doing checks on performance reviews, what types of comments are being made on performance reviews. That is absolutely where younger managers can get themselves in trouble with older workers by saying, they're unwilling to learn new technology or unwilling to change new ideas, or they're slow. All of these words that, that worker in their head hears, all you're telling me is I'm old. These are all euphemisms for my age.
All right. Well, all this makes it sound like, everybody's all different and we've got to deal with all this melting pot of a zillion different kinds of personalities and interests. But really, I think that there's been a lot of studies that say that we're actually not all that different. Is that right?
That is true. Again, different people approach work differently, but at the end of it, when they do surveys that are blind as to ages, and then they, discover at the end, everybody wants the same thing out of a workplace. They want to be treated with respect. They want to have satisfying work. They want to be paid for the work that they're doing, and they want to get good feedback on their work. So those are the types of things that are consistent across the board, that if your workplace is providing, you are appealing to a multi-generational workplace, not just any one specific group of employees.
This has been so much fun. I always love talking to you. This is a blast.
I love talking to you too. Thank you, Leigh.
And that's it for this edition of Close Up on Workplace Law. I've been your host, Leigh Tyson. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.